I'm excited to be with you today as we get a chance to look at strategy, MicroStrategy, however you want to call them. It was just last fall they switched into MicroStrategy is their, excuse me, strategy being their new brand. Yet their ticker symbol still is MicroStrategy. It's kind of going back and forth, so we may use them a little interchangeably. Good to have you here. This is a business that we had a number of you requesting us to do. I got to be honest, when I first looked at them, I was like, well, not a lot of data here, not a lot of information. But man, as I had a chance to go through and really see their history and really see what's gone on, it's actually quite an interesting, very unique product, very unique model of what they're doing as a business. And so I'm excited to kind of jump in and obviously Bitcoin has gotten a lot of time and attention over the last number of years. So it's exciting to do a unique company outside of kind of our norms. So appreciate those that requested. Hopefully, if you request it, hopefully you're on today. If not, watching our recording here in the next week or two. Well, folks, let's jump into what this is. Make sure we're all on the same page, know what we're doing today. Every month here at Acumen Learning, we provide business and financial acumen training for many clients, Fortune 500. In fact, we've done work with 34 of the Fortune 50. And we're purely focused on the topic of business and financial acumen. Many of you are graduates of our program, so thank you for coming back. I can't think of a better way to continue to build your business and financial acumen than once a month stepping back, going back to some of the tools that we provided in the course and look at different companies. It's a great way to assess that. Now, of course, if you're with a publicly traded company, at least every quarter going back to your company and listening to what they're communicating, again, using the tools that I'm going to share with you today, to really get comfortable around corporate strategy, how we're performing, with the idea of let me listen to what our executives are saying. How do I bring it down to me individually and execute around our strategy? And that's what these programs are about. Today is our How to Listen to Earnings Call program. And just to get a feel, some of the technologies I'm going to use, one is going to be the poll. So I'm just launching a poll here. So my question is this the first time you've attended our earnings call webinar? Like I said, every month we do this. We do different companies every month. It's a great opportunity to reconnect to tools, resources. Now, folks, if you've never been through one of our programs, that's okay. I'm going to show you how to use it. And I promise you, use this 2 to 3 quarters consecutively. You'll absolutely be more confident around this, more comfortable on how to look at and assessing companies. Well, folks, looks like, let's see, about 52% of us that have joined this is your first time. So welcome. Good to have you here. No, many of us are coming back. Folks, if you're coming back, I love that. Come at least 2 to 3 times after your course if you can. I would start inviting your colleagues, your peers. If you're a manager, bring direct reports. It's a great way to build the business acumen of your whole organization. So it looks like about 54% of us. Thank you for doing our poll. Looks like it's working just fine. Welcome for those that are new. Looking forward to jumping into this activity today. Then the second thing, just real quick, open your chat box. As Stephen described, we're going to be using the chat box as our form of communication. We get a lot of people on these calls, want to make sure that we can interact with you through the chat box. So open that up and just put, where are you calling in from? Give it a city, a state, a country. Where are you calling in from? My team and I are just south of Salt Lake City, Utah today. We were founded by 2 executives at Franklin Covey, Stephen M.R. Covey. Stephen Covey, who's on the phone, it's his father. And then our CEO, Kevin Cope, an author of our book. They had worked with Franklin Covey for many years, more on kind of the business side. And what they found was a real opportunity within corporate training, and that is how to help people understand how their company makes money, how decisions are made around the money-making prospect. Most importantly, what can I do to drive financial performance? That's the foundation of what our courses are all about, helping people to build their credibility, kind of build their career, and of course, build their company. Well, it looks like we got people all over the United States, Nigeria. Thank you, Joanne. Ellen, good to have you today. India, excellent. We've got people from all, so I should say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening as we get started today. Well, folks, those will be the tools. Myself and my team will be watching in the webinar, trying to answer questions in the webinar chat there. So feel free to use that as we jump in and get going. Well, let me jump in with one more poll. The question is this. you're coming to a course on how to listen to earnings calls. And my question is just simply, when was the last time you had a chance to engage in or to review, listen to an earnings call? So here's my poll. When's the last time you had a chance to listen to an earnings call? Now, listen could be reviewing it, could be reading the transcript, etc. Have you done one this year? I mean, we're halfway through the year. We've had a Q4. We got that. Basically, they're required to report to the SEC by the end, basically by March 1st. So typically, you're looking in late January or February. You'll have them start doing the earnings calls. So we've had Q4, we've had Q1 of 2025, and we've just closed Q2 of 2025. And here in the next few weeks, you're going to start to see those happening again. Some have already happened late July, but here in August, you're going to see a lot of these calls happening. So perfect time to be taking this program. Looks like as we look at the group here, last time we listened I'll share that with everybody. Looks like 58% of it, it's been this year. Last year, it's been a while, 9%. I've never attended. So 19%. Excited to kind of introduce you and hopefully inspire you to jump in. Folks, sometimes it feels a little intimidating as they're talking about various metrics within financial organizations. Today, what I'm going to provide is just a simplified framework and a couple tools that you can use to do these assessments. So, folks, what's interesting is it's kind of we're kind of rare in the group that we have today, in that there's a stat that we've got from some research Harvard Business Studies did, where only about 25% of employees listen to their earnings calls. This group today, I mean, we're in the high, 75% or so. We've listened to earnings calls or engaged in those conversations. Well, what's interesting is here's another stat that you may or may not be familiar with, and that is 95% of employees don't understand company strategy. 90% of employees don't understand their company's important business metrics. Now, folks, that's kind of tough. I mean, imagine you're the CEO, and of course, the company we're doing today is a MicroStrategy or strategy. We're going to be looking at their Q1 information. Their CEO is Phong Le, who's been the CEO for many years, part of the team. And you understand these statistics. 25% of employees don't engage in these calls. 95% of employees don't understand corporate strategy, and 90% don't understand important business metrics. That's a tough situation to be in, right? Now, here I'm a CEO of formerly MicroStrategy, positioned as the world's first and largest Bitcoin treasury company. They talk about that all throughout the call. Now, what does that mean? Well, the easy way to think about it is think about treasury in the context of how we think about it here in the United States. We got a treasury, right? How do we protect our financial position, our currencies, et cetera? They're basically setting Bitcoin rather than like gold or some other metal you might see. It's kind of the core of your treasury. Bitcoin being a treasury. It's an opportunity for many of us. I mean, you look at Bitcoin, depending on which one you're looking at, we're talking pretty significant investment to invest in Bitcoin. Well, this is a way where you can invest in a company where their core structure is around Bitcoin. So it's a way you to get access without having to go out and spend, $100 grand to get a one Bitcoin, right? So it's an interesting strategy, very focused around that. So you're the first and largest kind of cutting edge approach to using Bitcoin as a treasury fund. You got kind of two lines of business. Now, we know them. Most of us who know them are very familiar with this idea of the Bitcoin side, right? Bitcoin treasury. But they really actually started, and a key portion of their day-to-day business part is enterprise analytics software. So kind of an AI software. It's called, I'm trying to remember the name of it. But anyways, it's a technology that they're used, about a $500 million company generating subscription and other resources. So think of it as kind of a software company that has now decided to transition into this Bitcoin treasury strategy. Founded in 1989, the original focus was on business intelligence and analytics software. Pivot from business intelligence to Bitcoin happened in 2020. So, folks, we're only talking 5 years, right? 1,534 employees. So that gives you a little foundation of who they are. So you've known as this kind of business intelligence company, and you're in COVID. You decide to kind of make this shift. We're going to take the funds we generate and really build this Bitcoin treasury strategy type business. That's what they've been doing. And folks, they've done very, very well. So imagine this foundational statistics, 25% of your employees potentially are not, or it's only about 25% of your employees that are listening to these calls, 95% not understanding your strategy, 90% not understanding your financial metric. Well, what is it as you think of put yourself in that CEO position, what is it you really need your employees to know and understand so that you can drive 1,500? How do I get 1,500 employees driving towards the same goals, objectives, thinking about their role in the context of our strategy, say, what can I do to help drive strategy? And one of their core strategies is taking the revenue, the cash flow they generate, obviously funding their capital investments within their business intelligence, but everything else is going into investing into Bitcoin. Not only that, figuring out a whole financial market with not just their common stock, but some preferred stock options, some convertible notes, different ways to get cash to fund what? Purchasing more Bitcoin. A Bitcoin treasury business is what you're looking at here. So what does I need my employees to know? What does I need my customers to know? Those that are investing, as well as if I'm using them as a business intelligence, do I start to look at them and say, wait, business intelligence, but I see a whole lot of emphasis around this Bitcoin strategy. Are you really helping me from a business intelligence perspective? Now, I'm not saying they're asking that question. That's just how I think about it. It seems like potentially split emphasis and focus. What do you want your shareholders to know? And then finally, what do you need partners to know? Well, folks, that's what these calls are all about. They're not required by law to hold them. They are required to submit to the SEC their financial performance. They're required to do that. They, in that financial performance, they're providing strategy, focus, et cetera. But most companies will take the opportunity to come and communicate to the market what's going on. So my guarantee is you think about what's the benefit, what's the hope, what's my kind of tagline of what I think you can get from this type of experience. I've been doing this for many, many years, working with many, many companies, global companies, big name companies you would know of. My experience is it's one thing to go to a program, a course that we provide, and you'll get some great learning, a world-class experience for sure. But if you don't do something with it, you're really going to lose that learning. My number one recommendation, any course I teach, any experience I have with our clients is this. If you'll take this information for the next 2 or 3 quarters, my guarantee is on this slide. It will build your credibility. Why? Because you'll be talking about your business. Imagine I'm working for strategy, MicroStrategies, and I listen to their call and I go back to my manager and say, hey, I was listening to our call. It seems like this is one of our big emphasis. Here's the things I think I can do to drive those results. Will that not absolutely build their credibility? In fact, I've had employees talk to me after going through our program, go and listen to the calls, where the managers say, how come you know so much about our business? I've had sales leaders who are selling to customers. We teach them how to use the tools. And their customers saying, how come you know so much about my business? So talk about building credibility, which of course is going to build your career, and you absolutely build your company or the companies that you're selling into. Well, folks, that's what I want to, that's my guarantee to you. Now let's jump in, show you the tools, and hopefully inspire you enough to say, you know what, Brent, I'm going to do this. I am going to absolutely take this, go look at a company I'm interested in, a company I work with, a company I sell in, but I'm going to do this. So all I'm giving you is a framework and a simple process. The process is this. You got to prepare, you got to analyze, you got to apply. So let me jump into the tool. Now, don't worry, don't take a bunch of notes. We're going to give you access to this at the very end. But let me just kind of walk you through. In the prepare phase, well, first of all, for those that are new to earnings call, 90% of you said, hey, I haven't ever gone to one. Well, here's what it is. They're typically somewhere around an hour. And in that hour, typically the executive team of the company that's reporting will take about 20 to 30 minutes to cover kind of where we are, where we are, what we said we were going to do, how well we performed against that, as well as where we're going to go. So think of it, I said I was going to do something. Let me tell you what I actually did, and now where am I going to go? Okay, that's what they're going to do. At the end of that, you're going to have this Q&A. Now, what's the Q&A? The Q&A is where analysts, these are from large investment firms that are tracking their stock, they get on the call and they ask clarifying questions. Now, a lot of times you'll have leaders say, just listen to the earnings call, the prepared remarks. Now, I get it. If you got short of time, it's a great way to get a basic understanding of what's going on with your company. That being said, if you ask me, if I was your executive coach, I'd say, folks, go through the Q&A. Even if you just kind of quickly review them, throw it into ChatGPT. What you're going to see is you're going to start to see is the market kind of agreeing with what the executives are saying, or potentially they step back and say, wait, I don't know if I'm really buying what you're saying. It's a great way to see how's the market going to potentially respond. So 1 hour on average, every quarter you have this. Most companies do this. Well, let's talk about this prepare phase. There's 3 things you got to do in the prepare phase. First, you got to locate the call or transcript. You got to review your notes, and then you got to meet with your team. Now, let me jump into the review the call, and I'm going to do a little switching here. Let me jump over, and I'm going to share a different screen. And the screen I'm going to share is this amazing Google screen. I know we're very familiar with that. Let me go and share that. Make sure I've got it up here. Share my screen here. Hopefully this works. So all I'm going to do is jump to Google. You jump into Google and you just type in what you're looking for. So I'm either going to do MicroStrategy or strategies. Let's see what happens. Well, it's already trying to guess at me. Strategy, investor relations. That's a great one. You could say Q1 reporting. You could say MicroStrategy's Q1 reporting, and it's going to find it for you. I click in there. It's already given me various locations I can go to. Now, when I get this, it typically will lead with the company's website. Now, I like to go to the company's website, especially as I get ready for the call, because that's where I can actually register for the call, get in there so I'm ready to go when the call happens itself. Now, there's a number of third-party organizations that will do different things where you can actually go in and see what they're talking about. But if I jump in right here, here's their investor page. Now, I jump down here and immediately I've got stuff in front of me. If I click right here, this is the call itself, the recording of the call. I hit play, it's going to give it. Now, because the call's already happened, it's actually showing me the recording of the call. Now, if I want to look at the second quarter, you'll know right here, here's the one that's coming up, right? July 31st, so it's Wednesday, Thursday of this week. If I want to register, I type in right here, and I'm ready to go. Now, folks, don't worry about the register. It's not like they're tracking a bunch of information. All it does is give you access to the link, and then you can actually put it on your website and go listen to the call itself. But that's a great way. So right now, if I'm preparing for the call, I'd log in here. In fact, I'll do it. I'll put in my email address. Spell it right. Hit register, and I'm ready. And what that does is it's going to send me an invite, and I can put it on my calendar. I'm ready to go. So now here on Thursday, I can jump in the call. Now, folks, if you haven't done this before, if the call's already happened, you just go right here. They're going to have the recording. Typically, within a couple of days, they'll have the recording available. Now, this is the recording as well as the slide deck that they use in the call. The second thing I typically look for is like the press release. What did they communicate to the market? Right here, they've got press release. The actual financial documents. How did they perform? It's all available to you, folks. This is something that's interesting. When I teach courses, a lot of times people are like, hey, how do you know so much about my business? How can you have so much information? Now, folks, I wish it was because I was brilliant. I wish it was because of my academic background. Basically, it's because I can read. It's all available to all of you. Any company that's publicly traded, you can quickly see what they're talking about, what they're focused on. So the first thing is to locate the call, go to Google, type in what quarter you're interested in, get ready for the call itself. If the call's already happened, you can go there, listen to the call, get a transcript for the call, etc. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. We'll answer any other questions on how to access the call. The second thing is to review your notes. Now you say to me, Brent, what do you mean by review my notes? I've never been to one of these calls. Well, you can always go back. For example, I just showed you, I could go to Q1, listen to what they've talked about, and then I'm ready for the Q2 conversation. If this is your first time and you don't want to go back to, don't worry. What's going to happen is you go through the tool that we're going to give you. That will be your resource for the next call. So as I go through what I'm talking about today, you're going to have enough information. If you wanted to track strategies, financial performance, take what we talk about today and go and listen to their next call. Prepare for your next call. The last thing that I would say is do it with others. Now, if you're a manager, I'd pull my team together. I can't think of a better thing. If I'm working for MicroStrategies or strategies, and I've got a team of employees, I can't think of a better thing to pull them together. Let's listen to this call together in the context of maybe we're in sales or we're in marketing or we're in IT, in the business intelligence side of the business. Let's pull all that together. Let's listen to what they said. Now, based upon what they communicated, what can we do with this? So it's a great way to bring your team if you're a manager. If you're not a manager, you're an individual contributor, get a colleague to do it with you. Get a friend to do it with you. It's a great way to kind of, here's what I heard, here's what you heard, with the outcome being, what can I do about it? What am I going to do about it? Well, folks, that's the prepare phase. You got to you got to get access to it. You got to review your notes. You got to meet with your team. The analysis phase is the biggest portion of the tool. Going through, how do I take all this information, bring it into simplified format that I can do something with it? That's the tool that we have. Now, what I'm going to give you is a simple framework of 5 fundamental drivers every company focuses on, plus 2 tools. For everybody who's been through my class, I know most of you have been through my class, open our chat box and help me as we educate those that have not been through the class on this simple framework. What I'm going to suggest to you, our research, our experience, 23 years of experience is this. There's 5 fundamental drivers businesses focus on. Whether you're a $500 million strategy, MicroStrategies, revenue generating, or you're a small little street vendor business. These are 5 fundamental drivers every company focuses on: cash, profit, assets, growth, and people. So what I want to quickly do is just make a high-level review of this. So when we talk about cash and the importance of cash, we all know that cash is important in business. Now, for MicroStrategies or strategies, it is pivotal because all that cash they're using to buy more Bitcoin. So we talk about cash and the importance of cash. In the chat box, somebody put in, well, give me some explanation, some tagline. Cash is important because of what? Cash is what for a company? Yes, Ricky's added, for certain size companies, if you're over a certain dollar amount, they're required to provide financial information. So, Ricky, thank you for that. Yeah, cash is king. Cash is our oxygen. Cash is the lifeblood of a business. I love that. Cash is vitally important. Yet most of the time, we don't wake up in the morning and say, I want to drive more cash today. We're driving profitability, greater revenue generation, or cost management to generate profit. In the outcome of all of those, maybe I'm an operations. I want to be as efficient as I can. Well, the outcome of everything we do is it's going to generate or add to or detract from our cash generation. Now, a company like MicroStrategy is so focused on getting cash to purchase more Bitcoin, cash becomes vitally important. So we talked in the course about simple ways that you impact cash. Obviously, generating more revenue, reducing cost. But then as you deal with like collections, how quickly I collect my cash from a customer, as we think about customer terms, how much inventory I'm carrying. Do I have the right amount of inventory? I don't want too much. I also don't want too little. And then finally, how quickly we pay our suppliers, our vendors. How we think about cash management in a business, vitally important. A couple metrics that companies will look at is just like their cash on hand, what's called cash and cash equivalents, or cash flow. And you'll hear MicroStrategy talk a lot about cash flow. As you talk about profit, though, that's the one we talk about and we experience quite a bit. Profits, the difference between the revenue that comes into a business and the expenses that are coming out of a business. Now, when you look at this profit, there's 2 fundamental levers there that we talk about. I call them business 101. If you want to grow your profit, you either have to increase something or decrease something, or the combination of both. In my chat box, what are those levers? Yeah, Ricky's kind of highlighted cash allows the day-to-day business operation to function. We have to have cash to run our business. I love that. Give us leverage. I love that as well. So yes, Kevin, increase my revenue and or reduce my cost. Those are the levers. Very simply put, this is what I call business 101. Guess what? Those 2 levers also impact our cash, how much revenue I bring in versus how much cost against that revenue. Eventually, I'm going to collect that. That's going to become cash for my business. That's what we're talking about. These 2 levers are fundamental of any business. So if I can grow my revenue through price or selling more of my products, what we call volume, and or reduce my costs, those things will increase our profitability. Now, assets then are what we call the definition of assets is anything we own or control which has value. If you're looking at strategies, you're going to see some technology, some intellectual property. They have some cash. They have some products, etc. but most of what they have is Bitcoin. Bitcoin, 550,000, although they just bought some today, in fact. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But 550,000 Bitcoin and change or so. That's a big part of what they own or control, which has value, right? So balance sheet assets is anything a company owns that has value. Now, what you talk about here is you're looking at what asset strength, how much do we hold on to versus how much do we distribute, or what we call asset utilization to fund future growth. Now, before I jump to the last two, just to make a reminder, when you want to understand what's going on in cash, look at your cash flow statement. That's going to tell you what's going on. If I want to see what's happening from a profit perspective, I'm going to look at my income statement. If I want to see what they own or control, which has value, I'm going to be looking at their balance sheet. Growth is what investors expect, and people are what makes it happen. So folks, with this simple framework, rather than listening to this call and trying to say, okay, they're talking about this, this, or this, being able to say, what are they talking about? Are they talking about cash, profit, asset, growth, or people? That simple framework, that mental model helps you to think about our business, be able to talk about the business, and be able to execute around the business. So that's the framework I'm going to suggest you use as you do analysis. Both of my tools use the 5 drivers as simple tools to help me assess strategy as well as financial performance. So let me give you the first tool. The first tool is called the executive alignment activity or tool. Here's what it is. You're going to take the 5 drivers, and as you're listening to call, you're going to look for, they talk about cash, profit, asset, growth, or people. Now, folks, some of you are going to say, Brent, it's been a long time since I've taken your course, or I've never taken your course. Don't worry. My team here is brilliant. What they've done is they put a definition of what we mean by cash. Right there in the yellow, it explains it to you. Not only that, it gives you some typical terms that you might listen to. I call them trigger words. If I hear them talk about distributions, dividends, stock buybacks, all these things, that's all sources or uses of cash. I'm listening for those to put a slash mark. So they say, look, we just generated $2.5 billion in cash through issuing stock. I've then taken that and I've just bought 21 or 22,000 Bitcoin. What am I going to, what slash marks are going to put? Well, I took cash, I generated cash. I took that cash and I bought an asset, Bitcoin, and it's probably growing my total number of Bitcoin. So in the end, it could be multiple drivers that you're putting slash marks on. So by the end of this, you get a ton of slash marks, and then you answer 4 simple questions. Which business drivers seem to get the most attention? I love the second part of this, and why. Why could be who are they talking to? Why could be economic implications? Why could be internal decision making? In the end, which business driver seems to get the most attention and why? What were the 2 or 3 main points the executive was trying to make? What are our goals, trends, and objectives going forward? And what key questions or concerns were raised by the analyst community? Folks, pretty simple tool. Listen to that call, put a bunch of slash marks, then come back and answer 4 questions. You're ready to go start the conversation around what am I going to do about it? Well, the only other thing I would add is after the calls happen, kind of track their stock, see what's happening over the next week or two to see did it have any impact on what's going on. Well, folks, we don't have time for us to go through the whole call and read through it, give you time to do this. So here's what we're going to do. I've got some quotes. Open up your chat box. Open up your chat box and let's go through this together. I'm going to show you some quotes. And as I show them some quotes, here's what we're looking at. I want you to just use the 5 drivers to assess which of the 5 drivers are they talking about as I go through these quotes. Yes, Rick, I got your question here. Rick, aren't there 3, price, volume, and cost? Yes, if you want to break it down that way. To me, revenue and sales, how does revenue and sales grow? It's through price and or volume. So I just put them under that. So yes, if you want to break it into 3, pricing, volume, or how we manage our costs, I typically say sales and cost. So driving sales through price and volume, and then impact costs. Hopefully that answers your question. Well, folks, here we go. Let me jump in, and here's the statement here. This is from their CEO. A strategy, meaning the company, remains the largest corporate holder of Bitcoin in the world, holding 553,555. You got to be exact because each one of those Bitcoins are somewhere around today's value, about $100,000, every one of those Bitcoins. with a total Bitcoin market value of 52 billion as of April 28th. It's the first. So let's just stop there. Which drivers stand out in that first sentence? Put it in the chat box. Yes, assets. Now, a lot of assets, Bitcoin being a big part of their asset. Growth, yes, absolutely. And Jessica, I love that. What's it able to have those? That takes a lot of cash to acquire those. Well, let's see what happened in the next sentence. In the first 4 months of 2025, we've acquired an additional 106.85 and a Bitcoin for a total purchase price of 9.9 billion. So again, yes, assets, growth. What's it taken to do that? Cash right there, right? In Q1 2025, Bitcoin's momentum accelerated meaningfully, driven by a series of landmark government actions. Most notably, the Trump administration announcing the establishment of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. This bold move marked the first time a sovereign government publicly recognized Bitcoin as a national reserve asset. Folks, now this is a big deal. As you think about government recognizing Bitcoin as a strategic reserve, what strategic reserves we're using? Well, cash, of course, but big one is gold for us in the United States, right? So they're actually recognizing Bitcoin as a viable currency, as a government entity. A huge thing for all of us that when it first came out, what are they doing? Is this going to be legit? This is creating more and more legitimacy. Now, it's not just them. If you listen to the call, other countries are doing the same around our Bitcoin. So it's interesting to see that huge landmark kind of change that's happened. As far as drivers, yes, I think you've thrown some in there. Growth, cash for sure. I don't know what you would put this kind of idea of changing the mindset of the world. Maybe that's a people thing. This idea of making Bitcoin very legitimate from kind of a reserve focused play, if that makes sense. Well, folks, that's how you do it. We don't have time to go through all of them, but that's the basic idea. I'll just quickly share one quote from their CFO. Just kind of read it on your own. Just throw in the chat box what stands out to you. Which drivers seem to get attention as you go through this? Yeah, Ricky, one of the reasons Bitcoin, gold, other these things, it can create some stability for sure. You know, this is where he starts talking about their business intelligent business here. So everything before this, a lot of Bitcoin conversation. But here we're talking about their business intelligence. So he starts by talking about his business intelligence, then he jumps into Bitcoin conversation. What I wanted to show you is there's a lot of conversation around cash and assets. That being said, on their business intelligence, they're moving into more of a cloud model, subscription based. Look at that, 62% growth in their year over year subscription services revenues. So a lot of profitability growth also coming into play. Well, folks, as I said, we don't have enough time today for us all to do this, but you get the idea. Now, imagine if you listen to the call, you've reviewed both the prepared remarks as well as the investor questions. You might have your sheet looking something like this. That's what I did. I kind of went through and did some of this drafting here. And you'll see the ones that really kind of stood out. For a long time, growth has always been a big one for most companies. But look at the ones that, from my perspective at least, here and here seem to get the most attention, with growth being very close after that. Very unique model, with Bitcoin playing such a big part of what they're trying to do. That is, you're getting a lot more attention than you often see with companies. Now, folks, when you do this experience, one of the things I want you to recognize, this is not an exact science. If all 100 of us or whatever we have on the call were to do this, we would not get the same amount of slash marks. But we do about 1,000 of these sessions a year. And invariably, what you'll find in a group of, say, 20 to 30 people is we'll all have the 2 or 3 drivers with the most focus will always rise to the top. We may not be in the exact same order, but it gives you enough kind of an ability to take that and say, okay, what are the top 2 or 3? Now, based upon the top 2 or 3, what should I do about that? Let's see. Let's see. What does a discussion around people look like in an earnings call? Great question. So the question around what would it look like? Well, sometimes they'll talk about shareholders and how it's impacting shareholders. So you see people driver there. The returns I'm getting back to shareholders. You're going to see a lot of people put slash on people. Sometimes internally you'll get it, where we talk about our good team and the efforts that they provided. Hey, we were going through a real challenging time, but our team was able to pull together and it continued to generate profitability. So you'd see profit and people. It's rare that you see, in my experience on an earnings call, the people driver being the number one. But some companies will have a little bit more focus. If they're having challenging time, you'll see that raised to the top, et cetera. Let me know if that answers your question. Okay. Well, so what I've done is, remember that once you've done this, you then go in and answer the 4 questions. The 4 questions: which business drivers seem to get the most attention and why? What were the 2 or 3 main points? What are the goals, trends, or objectives going forward? And what key questions or concerns were brought up by the investment community? Folks, I've done that for you. Now, if you've done it, I'd love to hear your insights. Put them in the chat box as we jump through. But I'm going to quickly review what I saw on the call based upon their Q1 performance. So which business drivers seem to get the most attention? Well, I had asset and cash at the top 2, asset being a little bit more. Now, why? What are the reasons? Well, one of the big reasons, it's their model, folks. It's their business model. It's a Bitcoin focused strategy. So it's all about generating cash and then investing in Bitcoin. So what were some of the key highlights there? Of course, Bitcoin as the core asset. That's why asset get a lot of time and attention. New fair value accounting approach. What this is, I'll talk about a little bit later because it's one of the questions the analysts brought up. But it's a different way for accounting for these assets, which was very unique. So a lot of conversations around that. This new change in how they're accounting for it, that's impacting their valuation as a company. Massive asset growth. Q1 saw a $1.2 billion increase in digital assets, reinforcing strategies, asset-led strategy over traditional revenue model. Key cash takeaways that stood out to me. A ton of conversation, more than I typically see with most companies, other than maybe Boeing when they're struggling in 2020, talking so much about cash. But it's part of their business, folks. That's what they're doing. They're running their business. They're providing stock for investors to generate more cash. To do what with? It's not to run their business. It's most of it's to put back into the company by buying more Bitcoin is their company. The title they use is a Bitcoin Treasury strategy. That's what they're doing, right? So a lot of conversation about cash. But when you're taking all that cash, invested in Bitcoin, they also talk about liquidity or leverage. Are we in a strong financial position? Their balance sheet's very strong. They've really got a good structure right now and a good financial performance. One of the things that was highlighted, operational cash burn negative, operating cash flow in Q1 for $45.1 million impact in that first quarter. So that was something they brought up, but it was a timing situation, not a big issue for them. So as you look at it, we're talking assets, we're talking cash is a big focus of them. Is asset-led strategy based on increase of the value of the asset Bitcoin? So that when you say asset-led, really it's a Bitcoin treasury play is what they're doing. But yes, as the appreciation of Bitcoin, as it increases, it strengthens their financial position. They can borrow against those assets. This is where that fair value accounting is going to start impacting their P&L a little bit. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But as far as, I'm not sure if I'm getting your question right, Fernando, is asset-led strategy based on an increase in the value? Asset-led strategy is really this idea of a Bitcoin treasury strategy, which is basically we're going to hold on to a bunch of Bitcoin and that appreciates. That's going to increase the value of the company. We got a little bit of business intelligence that we're also adding to that. We want to run that effectively. But yeah, it's really a way for investors to get into the Bitcoin market. That's their real business. And so, asset-led is being Bitcoin, being the big focus. So hopefully that's answering your question. Great question. So where do they get the cash to fund this? Well, we'll talk about that. Well, one of the big things is they issue stock. And I'll talk about those in just a moment, but they're issuing stock, getting that cash in, then they take that right back and they buy a stock. Now they have their core common stock, which was which most of you are probably aware of. but they also have 2 preferred stock options that are bringing in cash as well. So as I said, a big focus of why they're focused on asset, why they're focused on cash is their Bitcoin treasury strategy. That's what they're focused on. Not only that, I think Stephen may have brought this up in an earlier call. Just today, they issued stock generating enough cash, 2.5 billion. So they thought they'd get about 500 million by issuing that stock. It's a preferred stock. They thought they'd get 500 million because of the appreciation of value. They generate 2.5 billion. They then took that 2.5 or 2.4 of it. They bought 21 billion more in Bitcoin. Probably the easiest way to think of this is kind of their strategy and their transition, kind of their normal business intelligent publicly traded company. It's all about revenue generation, reduce costs, take that cash flow, reinvest in your company, get some money back to shareholders. What they've done is they said, we're going to buy into Bitcoin. If you want to get into Bitcoin, this is a way for you as an investor to get into. So they have their common stock. They've got 2 different types of preferred stocks. Then they'll also fund investments or getting cash through a convertible note, where they're basically going to financial institutions saying, look, you give us this amount of money, we'll pay you back in Bitcoin stock, basically. It's going to convert to that. And they're generating cash off of that to then fund the purchase of more stock as a group. Very interesting model, very unique in what they're doing. Not so unique because everybody's taking their strategy and replicating it. How does negative EPS relate to the story? Tracy, let me come back to that when I get to the profitability here. So let me jump into the next one. What are the 2 or 3 main points the executives are trying to make? Strategy remains the world's largest corporate holder of Bitcoin. They're saying, we're the first, we're the place, you want to be with us. They're not necessarily downgrading the other companies they're doing, because they feel like the more companies that are trying to replicate what they're doing just continues to legitimize their model. The company is executing sophisticated capital market strategies: equity, converts, preferred. Those are 3 ways that they can get cash. The equity is just their regular stock. Then their preferred stock, those are going to be basically their preferred stock to pay a dividend. I think it's 8 to 10%. And then the converts, that's getting cash. Hey, you give us this cash, we'll convert it. They just did one, generated a bunch of cash, and it's not going to convert till 2020. So it's basically, give me your cash today, and 2030, I will pay you back in stock. Well, allows them to have the cash today, and it's a debt obligation they're going to have to pay out by 2030. They'll pay that out. Obviously, the idea is your appreciation of value allows you to use less preferred or equity to pay down that convert that you did. Bitcoin treasury strategy is significantly outperforming the market, and all the data on there. They shared their chairman. He got on the conversation and he said, "Look, you look at us compared to the S&P 500. We are like 3 times what their growth strategy performance is." Now, folks, I need to do my disclaimer right now because I'm going to say a lot of positives. I am not a financial planner. Do not use any of this information to impact your investment strategies. But the way they talk, their growth, their opportunities, they're talking 2-3 times the market on everything that they're doing. And if you look at their data, you're seeing some good numbers as far as their stock, both their equity stock as well as their preferred stock. Despite Bitcoin's volatility, accounting swings, strategy sees large-term value creation through disciplined execution. So one of the things they talk about, this is where I get to the analyst. Let me jump over the analyst questions. One of the analyst questions that they brought up was this fair market accounting. Here's what it is. So typically when you buy a piece of equipment or you invest in an asset, you put it on your balance sheet, you start depreciating those assets. Well, when you're buying Bitcoin, it's treasury, it's financial stuff. So what you're looking at is it appreciates in value. You typically don't add the appreciation. You also don't take any impairments when it drops. Well, fair market decided, they went to a fair market strategy where basically what they're doing is they're taking whatever the value is, and if it goes up or goes down, they're going to put that value of those Bitcoin in their balance sheet. Now, what does that do? It creates a lot of transparency for an investor. I can see what the value is every quarter of that stock. The problem is they're going to get either gains or losses. When they first put this in, they had a $6 billion loss, unrealized loss on their income statement. Probably more than you ever wanted to know. This is like more accounting than you'd ever want to get into. But basically it's going to do, it's going to start impacting their P&L. So going back to your EPS question, they're not so concerned about a negative EPS in Q1. They see it as a timing issue. But in the end, that was an impairment. It was because of an accounting change that's decreasing their profitability. So they're going to take the hits in profitability, but they feel like that volatility is going to create more transparency, make even more credibility in what their asset value truly is. Which, by the way, when they did another investment, so it went down by 5.6 billion in value, but it's back up to like $95 per Bitcoin. So they have a $7 billion increase in the value. So what it means is investors, you're looking at their P&L trying to make sense. You got to kind of exclude the non-realized gains or non-realized losses that they get. But there was a big conversation around that. Let's see, who is replicating mind-blowing strategy? Fernando, at the end, I'll give you a list of them. I'm going to go ahead and jump into that. Does it sound like a long-term bubble? Fernando, this is, again, I'm not a financial planner. I see some real credibility around federal governments recognizing this is an asset base. So I think that's an interesting one. But yeah, the nice thing about it, for relatively low expense, you can jump into something like this and kind of look at it. But that's about as far as I'm going. I'm not saying anything at what you should do. Anyways, so what goals and trends? One of the big goals that they have is 42 billion in equity, 42 billion in fixed income. They've already generated 27 billion. So they're looking for another 57 billion, and all that's going to go back into investing into more Bitcoin. Obviously, scaling their Bitcoin holding was a significant goal. They continue to see that as a big market opportunity. Educating capital markets how to invest. One of the things their chairman described is how many different insurance companies, pension companies are actually investing in them to get access to a Bitcoin strategy. So again, more legitimacy in what they're doing, more credibility in what they're doing is a big part of what they're doing, what they're focused on. Optimize Bitcoin yield, basically getting good returns to their investors, and continue to maximize shareholder value. Well, folks, let me just quickly, I know we're kind of good questions today, by the way. There's a lot we could go into to look at that. Excellent. Brooklyn's put a great article for you. Thank you, Brooklyn. So the fair market accounting, just a lot of questions around. You do this, now you're going to see your incomes going up and down, where it's just an accounting up and down. It's not legitimate numbers that are happening. How should you think about that? How's that going to impact investors' confidence? The idea of competitors, investors. They have, I think, around 100 or so different companies trying to compete. They're just quite a bit behind. Imagine if you started this 5 years ago, invested in Bitcoin versus what Bitcoin value is today. But they're very positive about how it builds credibility. And then pace of capital raises and balancing equity versus debt. So this idea of gaining access to that capital. Remember, when they're issuing their stock, they're giving up some equity. That's going to impact their other investors, right? Versus, keeping a strong balance sheet to withstand the ups and downs. Well, folks, let me just summate here because we're basically almost at time here. What's the big message? Huge opportunity in Bitcoin. A lot of cash coming in to fund Bitcoin. Great returns they're communicating. They did not talk a lot about their business intelligence. That's where I kind of pause a little bit. But in the end, great performer, very positive what's going on in their business. So let's see if the numbers kind of match that. Now, I'm going to talk through the approach. We're not going to have time to go through and have everybody look this up and do it. But let me just quickly talk through. This simple tool is a simple resource using the 5-driver model to kind of look at any company's key basic financial information. Now, folks, if you know the company better, you can go and highlight, for example, what's their key profit? I just have net income, but let's say they use operating income as a key measure for them. Well, then calculate that metric. But this is a simple way to assess financial performance. Here's how it works. Basically, what you do is you come here, you got the key metrics most companies will look at, whether it's a strategy, whether it's GE, whether it's ConocoPhillips. Any of these companies, you can take this information. Here's key metrics that they potentially work at. In addition to the key metrics, it tells you where to go in the statements to find the metrics. Now, if there's some sort of calculation, it's going to give you how you're going to calculate. So, folks, you don't have to have a finance background. You can take this simple sheet. In about 15 minutes, you can assess the performance. Let me just do one or two to show you how it works, and then I'm going to jump into the results. So first of all, let's say we're doing cash and cash equivalent. It says right here, I'm going to go to my balance sheet. Now, folks, you don't have the balance sheet. I do. Just one, let's put it in the chat box. Look at the balance sheet. You're looking for the measure cash and cash equivalents. How much cash and cash equivalents did they have on hand? Put in the chat box for me, would you? Cash and cash equivalent. There you go. Thank you, Justin. $60,298,000,000 of cash available. Now, that was as of March 31st. It'll be interesting. They just did $2.4 billion, but most of that fund came in through investment. I'll be interested to see what they have as a cash position. I just plugged that in. Well, you do the same thing on cash flow. You come over here, it says cash flow. I want to look for cash from operation. I'm looking for the cash flow statement. I go right here. This is that negative cash flow. Now, folks, this was Q1. They had a big investment, a big issuance. They had a big reduction of their profitability. They edit that out. But in the end, yeah, you don't like to be negative cash flow, but it's only one quarter. What you'll see is they go throughout the year, this number's going to jump up. I mean, this was full year last year. Let's see, 3 months ending. No, that's last year's number. So it's a timing of their investments is what you see going on in their numbers. But yeah, you typically don't like to see that. Well, let's go down here and let's see the full number. So I could go through, you keep doing that. You can do all the calculations. It's going to look something like this. Now, the big thing is this net income negative $4.2 billion. Now, remember, though, because of their new accounting approach, they took a $5.5 billion reduction of the value of their Bitcoin, comes over on their balance sheet as an expense. So the major reason why you've got negative EPS, the major reason you got negative net income is because of a non-cash item. They didn't sell the Bitcoin. And just in their most recent conversation, a recent report, they talked about, well, it just increased in value. So they're going to get a gain of $7.9 billion. This is going to get pretty messy, and this is what the market was really concerned about. So the profitability numbers don't look so good, but don't get confused around that. This equity position is off the charts. What does that say? That says that they're in a very strong financial position. The amount of equity so all this issuance of stocks, they've got a long way to go. A typical equity position for the S&P 500 would be somewhere around 35% to 25 to 35%. They're at 73%, one of the highest ones you'd see. So they can continue to issue stock, bringing cash in to buy Bitcoin, very strong position. All their growth numbers from the typical profit numbers don't look so good. Why? Well, it's because of what they did in Q1, this big impairment they took, the numbers aren't going to look so good. Here's what you see a year ago, 2024 numbers. You're seeing a lot better from a cash flow generation. You'll see this right here. Total revenue, about the same, but profitability. This was different types of accounting. That's what caused that big shift. Well, in the end, you look at the numbers. This is going to be one you're going to have to spend a little bit more time on numbers because they're not as clean and as easy as what we normally expect. But it has to do with the type of business that they're running. So, folks, what do I know now? Well, I know they've got a lot of confidence, a lot of success around their Bitcoin strategy. Their numbers look a little off. But yet, if I take my business acumen, I say, wait, this is just an accounting change that they made. So the reason they've got negative profitability has nothing to do with operations. It has a whole lot to do with how they're accounting for it, with the idea of trying to help their investors know better what's the real value of that Bitcoin they've purchased. I can see why it's going to look that way. So you got to look at this company a little different. Well, where do I go from here? Let me wrap up with just what am I going to do about it? If you don't do something, folks, we've wasted your time. We, working with our clients, had a company go in and look at what's the value of business acumen to individuals, to organizations. They actually found a 300% return by bringing us in and helping their companies understand their business better. But my guarantee to you, as you use these tools and looking at these companies, here's the types of outcomes you'll get. 84% of employees that did this assessment found that it improved the performance of their business and function. 81 said that it increased collaboration. 77% improved upward communication. Just imagine if you're able to take this information, talk to your manager, and make a business case of what you should do within your functional role. 77% said it improved employee engagement. 75% said it increased business focus. 84% said it improved teamwork. Folks, my guarantee is once you go through this and you actually do something with it, it absolutely is going to build your credibility, build your career, and build your company. So the last phase of this is to say, what stood out and what are you going to do about it? For me, I've already highlighted the key standouts. Fully leaning into this Bitcoin strategy, this treasury reserve. That's huge. I didn't realize that. I was familiar with them, but to go through it, it's a unique model and an interesting approach. Subscription revenue growth. The idea they still have their business intelligence group and they're making this transition. And then the idea of the fair market, for me, it's an easy one. It's like, okay, this is not telling me the true story. What is the true story? The true story is that Bitcoin is increasing or decreasing in value, has very little to do with what's impacting their true profitability as a company. So I got to look at adjusted numbers to make sense of what's going on. So what am I going to do about it? Well, if I was an employer, then what I would do is monitor Bitcoin markets, what's going on, because that's a big part of what's happening to the success of this company. I would go like Fernando was asking, what are some of the competitors? What are they doing? Do they have a unique spin on this? And then track how they're doing it, how well I continue to track them, see if it's something I'm interested in. Now, as a consultant for me, I'd go back and share. I'm going to share this information with my clients. I'm going to track some of their peers, see how things are going. And boy, if you're with strategy, come talk to us. We'd love to help you and help your team understand your business. Very unique model. The last step of our program is to then go have a conversation. Once you've done this analysis, I can't think of a better thing to go talk to my manager and say, here's what I heard our executive team talk about. Here's the 2 or 3 things I think we should do. I want to see, am I going the right direction? Are we aligned with, and have my manager say either, how come you know so much about our business, or help tweak it to it. No, actually, here's something I think I'd like you to add. Then that next quarter, I'm in a strong position to execute around the strategy of the business. Well, folks, that's the tool. We had a lot of questions today. Really appreciate that. So prepare, analyze, and apply. Brooklyn's put in the chat box how to access this information. When you go to that link, August 20th is our next opportunity. As we look at that, we're going to be looking at Walgreens, kind of jumping totally different industry. Walgreens, what's going on there? So we'll look at that. So go ahead and sign up. If you're looking for a quick refresher, if you haven't had any exposure to this, and you're just an individual, we'll give $100 off our Seeing the Big Picture self-paced learning. It's a great interactive, give you a baseline of a lot of what I'm talking about today. In addition to that, if you are a company, or you're a manager saying, I want my team to understand that, we can come in and do a deep dive on your business, a deeper dive than what we did today, focused on your corporate strategy and help your employees understand that. Or we can come in and train you on business and financial acumen. Folks, it's been my pleasure spending time. We had great questions. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Download that, engage, come back, bring your colleagues. Let's jump in and build our credibility, build our career, and build our company. Thank you, folks.